Good morning. Welcome to the Fairy Frequency Channel. I'm reading to you today from Shambhala The Sacred Path of the Warrior by Chogyam Trungpa. If you've missed any of the previous chapters of this book, you can find them in our original playlist called Shambhala The Sacred Path of the Warrior. And today we are on chapter 15, which is called Overcoming Habitual Patterns. The process of freeing yourself from arrogance and cutting off your habitual tendencies is a very drastic measure, but it is necessary in order to help others in this world. Arrogance comes from lack of gentleness, as we have discussed already, but beyond that, lack of gentleness comes from relying on habitual patterns or behavior. So habitual patterns are also an obstacle to invoking Drala. By clinging to habitual behavior, we are cutting ourselves off from the warrior's world. Habitual patterns are almost like reflexes. When we are shocked, we panic, and when we are attacked, we become defensive. On a more subtle level, we use habitual patterns to hide our self-consciousness. When we feel inadequate, we employ habitual responses to patch up our self-image. We invent excuses to shield our inadequacies from other people. Our standard emotional responses are often reflections of habitual patterns, as are mental fatigue, restlessness, irritation over something that we don't like, and many of our desires. We use our habitual patterns to seal ourselves off and to build ourselves up. The Japanese have an interesting term, toranoko, which literally means tiger cub. It is a pejorative term. When you call someone a toranoko, you mean that he is a paper tiger, someone who appears brave but is actually a coward. That is the description of clinging to habitual patterns. You may make feeble attempts to expose your cowardice, using eloquent language. You may make a confession, saying, "I know I'm not all that fearless," but even your confession is still an expression of Toranoko, a fat tiger cub who is afraid of his own shadow, afraid to jump and play with other cubs. The Tibetan word for animal is tudro, tu meaning hunched and dro meaning walking. Tudros are four-legged animals who walk hunched over. Their most sensitive sense organs are their nostrils, which they use to smell their way through the world. That is a precise description of habitual behavior, which is a manifestation of animal instinct. Habitual patterns allow you to look no further than 3 steps ahead of you. You are always looking at the ground, and you never look up at the bright blue sky or the mountain peaks. You fail to smile and rejoice at the mist rising over the glaciers. In fact, anything above your shoulder level is embarrassing. No possibility of head and shoulders has ever occurred in that realm. You may have been instructed in how to experience head and shoulders and how to raise yourself up to see the great eastern sun, but still, if you don't overcome habitual patterns, you could remain a tudro who hunches over and walks on 4 feet. When you follow your habitual patterns, you never look to the right or to the left. You fail to see the brightness of colors, and you never appreciate the breeze coming in the window. You want to close the window right away because fresh air is a nuisance. When a tudro-type person who is filled with habitual patterns looks at a warrior, he might feel that the warrior has a very tedious existence. How in the name of heaven and earth can the warrior be so upright and awake? A tudro, a 4-legged, hunched, unhead and shouldered person, may feel very sorry for the warrior, because the warrior has to stand on 2 feet and maintain head and shoulders. Quite possibly, such a sympathizer might make a gift of a chair to the warrior, thinking that a chair would make the warrior happy. Then the warrior wouldn't have to maintain his head and shoulders. He could at least slouch once in a while and put his feet on the coffee table. But a warrior never needs to take time off. Trying to relax by slouching or indulging in habitual patterns only produces schizophrenia. You are such a nice boss and such a good, humorous person at the office, but the minute that you come home, you forget everything. You turn on your television, you beat your wife, and you send your children to their rooms telling them you need peace and quiet. One wonders what kind of peace and quiet such a person is looking for. It seems rather he is looking for pain and a hellish life. So you can't be a warrior in the office and a Chogyam at home. The process of freeing yourself from arrogance and cutting off your habitual tendencies is a very drastic measure. But it is necessary in order to help others in this world. You should take pride in yourself and uplift yourself. You should regard yourself as an honest and genuine warrior. The former Secretary General of the United Nations, U Thant of Burma, exemplified how to be a warrior and help others without arrogance. He was highly educated and thoroughly soaked in the practice of meditation. He conducted the affairs of the United Nations with dignity, and he was so soft and gentle. Therefore, people felt in awe of him. They felt his power. They admired what he said and the decisions he made. He was one of the great statesmen of this century and great example of someone who has overcome habitual patterns. Habitual patterns are dangerous and destructive. They prevent you from seeing the great eastern sun. When habitual patterns constantly operate, you can't raise up your head and shoulders at all. You are down, looking for this and that. You are more concerned with the flies sitting on your cup than with the great sun that is coming up. You have forgotten about uplifted and open vision and about seeing the great eastern sun directly. You begin to dissolve yourself and involve yourself in a subhuman or even sub-animal realm. You are not willing to take part in any immediate delight. You are not willing to relate with the least edge of the pain or even discomfort in order to see the great eastern sun. When you were very young, 3 years old, you didn't want to escape reality, particularly because you were so interested in how things were done. You used to ask your father and mother all sorts of questions. Why is this so, Mommy? Why is this so, Daddy? Why do we do this? Why don't we do that? But that innocent inquisitiveness has been forgotten and lost. Therefore, you have to reignite it. Entering the cocoon of Chogyam behavior happens after the initial inquisitiveness. Once there was tremendous inquisitiveness, and then you thought that you were being mistreated by your world, so you jumped into your cocoon and decided to sleep. Uplifting your head and shoulders may sometimes give you back pains or a strained neck, but extending yourself, uplifting yourself is necessary. We're not talking about philosophy, but we are talking about how on earth, how in the name of heaven and earth, we can actually become decent human beings without trying to entertain ourselves from here to the next corner. The constant search for immediate entertainment is a big problem. What can I do next? How can I save myself from boredom? I don't want to see that bright world at all. As we sew our fabric with a needle and thread, we think, is there another way that I can make these stitches? Is there any way that I can avoid having to make a straight journey? The journey we are making is demanding, but there is no way of avoiding it. By stopping habitual patterns, we can appreciate the real world on the spot. We can appreciate the bright, beautiful, fantastic world around us. We don't have to feel all that resentful or embarrassed. If we don't negate our habitual patterns, we can never fully appreciate the world. But once we overcome habitual patterns, the vividness of the Drala principle, the magic will descend, and we will begin to be individual masters of our world. That is the end of chapter 15, Overcoming Habitual Patterns. So, if you've missed any of the previous chapters of this wonderful little book, you can find them in our original playlist titled Shambhala The Sacred Path of the Warrior. Thank you so much for joining us today, folks. Wishing you all a beautiful, wonderful Thursday. See you next time.